I still remember the sound of crystal glasses clinking when my father ruined my life. It was the last night of the year, and the Lane mansion in Aspen glittered like a snow-covered palace. Gold chandeliers, a roaring stone fireplace, a string quartet playing in the corner, and nearly 30 relatives waiting for the countdown. I stood near the staircase holding a half-finished champagne flute, trying to look composed even though my hands were cold with dread. "Harper," my father said, tapping his glass with a silver spoon. "Come closer." Everyone turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the violinist faltered. Victor Lane, my father, the man who built the Evergreen Trails Collective and believed emotions were for the weak, lifted his glass higher, as if about to honor me. He didn't. "Before the new year arrives," he announced, "our family must correct a long-standing mistake." His eyes slid toward me with a look I'd seen since childhood. Disappointment sharpened into performance. As of 11:58 tonight, Harper Lane will no longer be part of this family. She is removed from the trust, removed from the will, removed from all rights and privileges associated with the Lane name. A gasp moved across the room like a cold wind. My mother, Dr. Margaret Lane, did not gasp. She simply opened the heavy leather family record book, signed her name in elegant strokes, and shut it with a snap. She didn't look at me once. My older brother, Brandon, raised his phone, recording the moment like it was a TikTok challenge. "This is going straight into the chat," he whispered to his girlfriend, smirking. "You cannot make this stuff up." Someone near the fireplace choked on their drink. Another relative murmured, "Is this necessary?" But nobody stepped forward. My father kept going. "Harper has chosen mediocrity, secrecy, and disloyalty over her family," he said, his voice booming. "And tonight, we cut ties. Cleanly." I felt all 30 pairs of eyes drilling into me. Some were pitying, most were relieved it wasn't them. Even then, I didn't cry. I refused. I set my champagne flute down on the nearest table and walked forward until I stood directly across from my father. I could feel the heat of the fireplace behind me, but his gaze was colder than the blizzard raging outside. "So that's it?" I asked softly. "That's the announcement you practiced in the mirror?" A few relatives stifled nervous laughs. My father's jaw tightened. "What did you expect?" he said. "Praise? Forgiveness?" "No," I replied. "Just honesty, which you finally gave me." For the first time that night, the room shifted. A few people leaned in. My mother straightened. Brandon lowered his phone, sensing something was off script. I took a slow breath. "Well," I said, "thank you for setting me free." My father blinked, confused. I didn't give him time to respond. I grabbed my coat from the banister and walked toward the door. Every step echoed like a drumbeat. My boots hit the hardwood. The storm outside roared louder, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. "Harper!" Brandon called behind me. "Where are you even going? You've got nothing." But he was wrong, because inside the pocket of my coat, a coat none of them cared enough to notice, I carried something none of them knew existed. A key. A small silver office key engraved with the initials SRH, Summit Ridge Hospitality. My father's most dangerous rival. The key to a corner office I hadn't shown anyone. I paused at the front door, turned back once, and let them see the faintest smile on my face. "You'll find out soon enough," I said. Then I stepped into the blizzard, letting the mansion doors slam shut behind me. In that moment, I felt the cold tear down everything weak inside me and leave behind only steel. They thought they had erased me. They had no idea what I was about to build. People think being disowned is the worst thing a family can do. It isn't. The worst thing is when they erase you quietly, long before the world ever finds out. Back when I still believed I had a place in the Lane Empire, I worked my whole life for one goal: Evergreen Trails. While everyone else partied through senior year at Cornell, I spent nights in the library studying revenue analytics, hospitality models, and case studies on crisis management. I graduated top 10% of my class, speaking 3 languages, already dreaming of transforming my father's resorts with modern systems. I thought I had earned my shot. I was wrong. I still remember the day I submitted my application to Evergreen Trails. I was shaking, not from nerves, but from excitement. I imagined my father reading my resume, surprised, maybe even proud. Weeks passed, no email, no call. Then Brandon slipped one day, smirking in that way only a sibling who enjoys cruelty can. You should have seen Dad's face when I forwarded your application, he whispered, leaning against the marble kitchen island. I wrote him a note. Don't waste time interviewing her. I froze. You what? Oh, please, he laughed. Someone had to protect the brand. I didn't yell. I didn't even breathe. I walked straight to HR that afternoon, demanding answers. The director gave me the kindest pity smile I've ever received. I'm sorry, Miss Lane, but we have no record of your application. That's impossible, I whispered. I submitted it twice. She lowered her voice. Your father instructed us to remove your file from the system. A pause. And not to contact you regarding interviews. In that moment, the truth hit me harder than any New Year's announcement ever could. My family didn't just reject me, they deleted me. I left the building without saying goodbye, without looking back, without giving Brandon the satisfaction of seeing me break. 3 days later, I packed my things and left Colorado. I drove north until the mountains changed shape and the sky felt different. Montana. A place where no one cared about the Lane name. A place where anonymity was a blessing. Silver Ridge Lodge wasn't glamorous. It was older, smaller, tucked between two snow-covered pines like a storybook cabin with peeling paint. But they needed a night auditor who could handle numbers and storms, and I needed a place where my last name meant nothing. By day, I was invisible. By night, I rebuilt myself from scratch. I studied reservation patterns, forecasted demand, tracked guest complaints, calculated losses, and kept everything in a worn leather notebook. My secret, silent rebellion. I didn't know what I was preparing for. I only knew I would need these skills one day. Then came the night everything changed. A blizzard, a power flicker, and a scheduling disaster so big it could have sunk the lodge. Double booking, one large group of Italian executives expecting a quiet retreat, and a bachelor party already drunk in the lobby, shouting over country music. The front desk panicked. The manager was off-site. Guests were moments from tearing each other apart, so I stepped in. I walked to the Italian group, switching fluidly into their language. Give me 1 hour, I told them. I'll create an experience you won't forget. I led maintenance to the old winter greenhouse behind the property, cleared heaters from storage, begged housekeeping to bring extra linens, and transformed that forgotten glass room into a private alpine dinner space, glowing with lantern light and charred cedar scent. When I brought the executives inside, they fell silent. Bellissimo, their leader whispered. They extended their stay. The lodge hit its highest revenue night that quarter. As I walked back through the lobby, brushing snow from my sleeves, I noticed a man standing near the fireplace. Tall, silent, studying me with unsettling focus. The front desk clerk whispered, That's Adam Cole. From Summit Ridge, my pulse jumped. Everyone in the industry knew him, the rival my father hated most. He stepped forward. You handled that beautifully, he said. His voice was calm, assessing. Most people would have folded. I didn't have another option, I replied. Adam's eyes sharpened. Maybe you do. I didn't know it yet, but that night, everything my family erased. Adam Cole had just witnessed being rebuilt right in front of him. Adam Cole didn't offer me a job the night he watched me save the lodge. He offered me a test. The first email arrived at 2:13 a.m. No greeting, just a link. When I opened it, an entire failing resort populated my screen. 5 years of revenue, guest surveys, occupancy charts, food and beverage losses, operating costs spiraling out of control. A note at the bottom read, Fix it by morning. I didn't sleep. I brewed coffee, pulled out my leather notebook, and worked through dawn. By 7 a.m., I had rebuilt their pricing model, redesigned their staffing structure, and created a snow season dynamic rate strategy that projected a 12.6% revenue increase. I sent it off, heart pounding. 5 minutes later, another link arrived. This time, a crisis simulation. A blizzard. Power outage. An international VIP demanding a helicopter evacuation. Solve or collapse, the instructions read. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I designed a contingency plan, including generator allocation, communication flowcharts, and a liability-safe alternative experience for the VIP. I included a backup scenario, because life had taught me that nothing ever happens just one way. 30 minutes later, another message. This time, a Zoom link. When I clicked in, Adam wasn't alone. 2 European partners stared back at me, switching into rapid-fire Italian. They grilled me, trying to corner me, test me, overwhelm me. I answered each question in fluent, steady Italian, even switching dialects when one of them smirked, assuming I wouldn't understand. When the call ended, Adam leaned forward on his elbows. "You don't fold," he said quietly. "Not even when someone tries to break you." "No one gets to break me anymore," I replied. Something in his eyes shifted. Recognition, maybe admiration, maybe calculation. I didn't know then that all three were true. 2 days later, he called. "I want you at Summit Ridge," he said. "Director of Guest Experience. Salary is what you deserve. Equity tied to NPS and RevPAR. You'd have the authority to rebuild us from the inside." My breath caught. That position, I said, "Itai, is what every analyst in hospitality dreams of." "Except you've earned it," he replied. "And I want your answer before your father realizes what slipped through his fingers." That last sentence hit me harder than I expected. Before I said yes, I drove to Boulder to meet the only Lane who had ever treated me like a human being, my father's sister, Aunt Nora Blake. Nora left the family when I was 10, sold her shares early, and spent the next decade building a quiet, peaceful life teaching environmental economics. When I told her about the offer, she didn't gasp or panic. She just nodded, eyes sharpening the way they had when she drafted contract clauses for my mother's malpractice board. "Let me see the documents." I handed her everything. She read every line twice, made notes, circled clauses, then looked up at me. "This is your future," she said. "But don't announce it, not yet. Let your father burn himself down first. He's close." I swallowed. "So you think I should sign?" "I think," Nora said, "that you should sign 2 copies, one for the safe, one encrypted. Oh, see, sai. Then go to the New Year's Eve party and let them believe you're powerless. Ashi sit. The humiliation will expose their true faces. And Harper," she touched my hand, "when the storm passes, you will be the one holding the match." So I signed. 2 copies, just as she instructed, one locked deep inside a steel safe, one turned into a coded file only I could access. Then I drove back to Aspen for the party where they would publicly erase me, while I was already a director at their biggest rival. You know the rest. My father raised his glass. My mother signed the family register. Brandon filmed like it was entertainment. I walked out into the storm with a key to my new office in my pocket. 3 hours later, I reached Denver. I stepped into my new corporate apartment, shut the door, and let out the first real breath I'd taken in years. Then I opened my laptop, typed my new credentials. Harper Lane, Director. The Summit Ridge dashboard lit up on my screen. And that night, while my family toasted to my disappearance, I began the campaign that would undo everything they thought was untouchable. The first thing I learned as a director at Summit Ridge was this: power doesn't come from titles, it comes from information. So I didn't walk into headquarters like someone with something to prove. I slipped in quietly, logged in, and began dissecting the company from the inside out. While senior executives argued over branding and decor, I locked myself in the analytics room and pulled apart every system they had. Check-in bottlenecks, vendor waste, lost ancillary revenue, static pricing that treated a blizzard week the same as a dry spell. Every inefficiency was a crack waiting for me to exploit. Within 2 weeks, I gathered the entire operations team. "We're changing everything," I said. "Starting with check-in." One manager frowned. "We've tried to fix that before. Guests hate kiosks." "Guests hate waiting," I replied. "Give them a 90-second solution, not a lecture." Within a month, we rolled out the first wave of 90-second kiosks. Complaints dropped. 5-star reviews climbed. Guests felt empowered. Next came the supply chain. I terminated 3 overpriced vendors, brought in 2 regional suppliers, and tightened loss control. Then I rebuilt our pricing strategy. The mountains live and breathe by weather, so I created the snowfall dynamic model, rates that flexed with storms, trail conditions, and traffic. Finally, the crown jewel, the warm blizzard package, a curated storm week experience with private fire pit dinners, heated cabin transport, and concierge wellness kits. Safe, luxurious, and profitable as hell. We launched it during the next snowstorm. Summit Ridge sold out in under 48 hours. When the quarterly numbers came in, the CEO's assistant ran into my office breathless. "Harper, NPS is up 9 points. Revenue during low season is up 13%. I nodded. but inside, something deeper stirred. A quiet, controlled vengeance. Because every point we gained, Evergreen Trails lost. I didn't seek publicity, but Adam did. At the annual Hospitality Summit in Austin, the ballroom lights dimmed as the keynote began. Suddenly, a giant screen lit up with my face. My official Summit Ridge headshot, my title, my metrics. Harper Lane, Director of Guest Experience. The architect behind Summit Ridge's turnaround. I froze. Then I heard someone gasp. My mother. She was 3 rows back with Brandon beside her. Her eyes widened as if she had seen a ghost rise from the stage. Brandon's face turned red, embarrassment, rage, humiliation, all fighting for space. After the conference, I stepped outside into the Texas heat. My phone buzzed. A message from my father. Don't ever come home again. No threat, no denial, no explanation. Just exile, digitized. I took a screenshot and archived it under a folder I'd titled, Evidence of Who They Really Are. After that, I went to war, not with anger, but with precision. For the next 12 months, I scaled every optimization across the entire Summit Ridge network. Dynamic pricing, vendor overhaul, storm packages, tech upgrades, guest behavior models. Meanwhile, Evergreen Trails bled out slowly. Their winter occupancy collapsed. Their margins imploded. Their debts ballooned until banks circled like vultures. And then the day came. I was in my office when Adam burst in. "Harper," he said, smiling like someone holding a loaded secret. "The banks just listed Granite Ridge Ranch and Red Canyon Retreat, the crown jewels of my father's empire." "Let's buy them," I said. Adam blinked. "At full valuation?" "No," I said, "at 40%. They don't have bargaining power anymore." I slid a folder across the table, a plan I'd been crafting for months. We acquire, we rebrand, we replace every outdated system. And Adam, I tapped the final page. We establish an employee stock ownership program. The people who kept those resorts alive through my father's mismanagement deserve equity. Adam stared at me for a long moment. "You want to build a new model," he said. "One your father would never choose." "Yes," I replied. "A model built on fairness, not fear." His smile widened. "Then let's take his kingdom, brick by brick." And just like that, the takeover began. Quiet, surgical, irreversible. They thought they destroyed me by erasing me, but I had become something far more dangerous. A woman who understood every weakness in their empire, armed with data, strategy, and the will to burn down the legacy that once tried to bury me. Granite Ridge Ranch reopened on a cold morning that tasted like winter metal and victory. Fresh snow glittered on the railings. The Summit Ridge banners snapped against the wind, and hundreds of employees, old and new, took their seats in the front rows exactly where I'd placed them. Not executives, not investors. Employees. People who had survived layoffs, panic, and the collapse of Evergreen Trails, and still chose to stay. Every seat carried a folder with ESOP details, new health benefits, and personalized notes from me. Behind them stood the journalists, the regional partners, and a few curious industry rivals who wanted to see how Elaine had just bought out the Lane legacy. The LED wall behind me glowed to life. No glossy commercials, no drone shots of mountains. Instead, I displayed numbers. NPS increase, +9, low season revenue lift, +13%, employees granted equity, 218. The crowd murmured with surprise. Some employees leaned forward, whispering to each other. That's when the glass door slammed behind the press line. My father. Victor Lane stormed into the lobby like a man who believed the world still belonged to him. A few cameras shifted immediately. Reporters smelled blood faster than wolves. "Harper!" he shouted, marching toward the stage. "You stole my resorts! You stole my legacy! This entire thing is fraud!" Security moved, but I raised a hand. "Don't touch him," I told them. "Let him come." Victor grabbed for the microphone, but I held it firmly. "This is my property," he roared. "Everything here is mine, and this traitor!" I stepped aside just enough for the LED screen to shift. A new slide appeared. Not numbers, documents, bank notices, foreclosure letters, Evergreen Trails insolvency statements, the final liquidation agreement, signed by Victor Lane himself. The room fell silent so suddenly, it felt like the building had inhaled. My father stared up at the screen, his face draining of color. "It's taken out of context," he whispered. I turned back to the audience, calm as stone. My father didn't lose these properties because of me. He lost them because he ignored data, ignored risk, ignored people, and the banks acted. A voice cut in, Brandon, shoving his way through the crowd, red-faced and trembling. "She sabotaged us from inside!" he yelled. "She was planning this for years!" Another slide materialized behind him. The audience gasped. There, on the 30-foot screen, was my job application to Evergreen Trails, time-stamped, clean, hopeful. And next to it, in crisp resolution, the email Brandon had sent my father: delete from pipeline, do not interview, do not log. Brandon Lane. The room erupted, not with chaos, but with a heavy, suffocating quiet. A truth settling into everyone's bones. My father looked at my brother with disbelief. You hid her application?" Brandon swallowed, suddenly small. "Dad, I thought—" "You thought you could bury me," I said, turning back to the crowd. "But people aren't data points you delete." I lifted the mic, steady and clear. The night my parents declared I was no longer their daughter, I had a choice. I could fight for a name that didn't want me, or build something worth belonging to. I swept my hand toward the audience, the employees who lined the front rows with shining eyes. This place isn't a monument to a family. It's a workplace built on fairness, transparency, and people who show up every day doing real work. That's the only legacy I claim. For a long heartbeat, no one moved. Then someone stood. It was Sam, a line cook who had spent 23 years at Granite Ridge. He once told me he feared losing his home if Evergreen collapsed. Today, he held a small envelope in his trembling hands. "My daughter's medication is finally covered," he said softly. "Thank you." He clapped first, one pair of hands, then another. Then the entire room rose in a thunderous wave of applause that drowned out the weak protests of Victor and the sputtering anger of Brandon. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered, employees cried. And near the back, under the rotating glass doors, Aunt Nora stood with her wine-colored coat wrapped tight, watching me with quiet pride. She nodded, slow, deliberate, like sealing the end of a long, painful chapter. The Lane Empire hadn't been taken from them. They had abandoned it, and I had built something entirely new. A home not of bloodline, but of earned belonging. If you listened to this story from beginning to end, tell me, did you enjoy watching Harper reclaim her power? What kind of story should I create next? Stories of betrayal, rebuilds, workplace wars, or family redemption? Comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next story shared by women brave enough to tell the truth of their lives.